welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am joined by an illustrious colleague. Would you like to introduce yourself?
It's Jody again.
Hi, Jody. And today we are joined by a fabulous author. We are so excited to discuss this immersive mystery. And yeah, here we go. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yeah, I'm Hazell Ward, and my book is called The Game is Murder, which is a part traditional kind of whodunit, but also it also blends in true crime. I've based the whodunit on a true crime, and it's also a little bit meta. There's lots of games in there. The reader gets to try out their detective skills, see if we're as good as we think they are. Because I always thought, as a reader, that I could be a great detective. So then I decided to write one. It's harder than it looks, but yeah. So I've let the reader have a little go at that as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice. Our first question is always sort of about your journey as a writer and how you got here. I know this is your debut novel, but you've written some award-winning things in the past. Could you talk to us about how you got here?
Yeah. So the novel itself, I've written for my PhD. I'm doing a PhD in creative writing, which I did really because I wanted to get published. And I thought, how I tried for a long time. I'd written 3 or 4 novels that were duds. Some of them were dreadful. Some of them, they got better, worked my way up to bad. And then I thought, I've got to, commit to this. So I did an MA in creative writing, which I really enjoyed. And then I thought, and I almost got published. I got a couple of publishers really interested in the thing that I did for my MA, but it was too short and it was too weird and it was, it wasn't commercial. And a few people said, we like the writing, but this isn't a book. So I thought, well, I'll keep going. And I did a PhD. And then I thought, well, I'm going to write a book rather than a piece of clever writing. So I decided to write a crime novel because crime novels are what I really enjoy. I've always loved reading crime novels. So I thought, this is my chance. I'm going to write a crime novel. So part of it was the PhD. I had to find something for my research project that would fit, but then I was also wanted to make sure it was readable and fun. So the PhD really got me published because it made me think about the book, but it was that journey from dreadful to published. It's been about 15 years, I think, of seriously trying. And then, all of the stuff that I did before was more sort of playing.
Wow, that's a long journey. That's amazing.
A slow learner is what I'm taking from that.
It's
I
kind
call
of
it
cool though.
painstaking, but it's just, yeah, I'm a bit slow, but I
I
get
don't
there in the
think
end.
it's kind of cool how you kept improving, leveling up, moving on, going on, and taking what you've
Yeah.
learned. That's impressive.
Well, thank you for that. I wish that I would I have liked to have learned those lessons quicker? Probably, but I think it is what it is, and then you just get. And then with this book, I was just lucky. I think the subject that my approach to it was just there are quite a few books coming out now that are similar to what I'm doing, but when I started writing it, it was quite new. I think so. I think I've just entirely accidentally caught on something. So that is just luck. So there was a little bit of planning involved in there, but and also a little bit of luck as well. And just sort of keep your head down, keep going type attitude.
Excellent. Yeah.
I'm curious about what came first? Was it the narrative or the puzzle structure? What occurred to you? I imagine that you sort of had to write through one and then you seed the other through, although that could be
Yes,
like
yeah. So I wanted it to be like a game, because the whodunit is a game, and it's always been a game. The reader against the detective. Who can they beat the detective? So there was that element of it, and I really like that, and I really like quite sort of knowing books. Where the reader is sort of in on the joke. So I wanted to include all of those things, but I mean, it was quite slow. It took me 4 years really to write the book from start to finish. And the book that I started out with was very different from what I've got now, because it did evolve quite slowly. And then I'd think, oh yes, and I can put this in, and then I'd have to go back and start it all again. So yeah, quite a slow evolution, but I really like all of the things that I like about whodunits, all that sort of classic crime, Hercule Poirot and Peter Wimsey and all of those classic detectives. I've always loved those, and I'm so pleased to finally get to write that.
Yeah, I like that part too. While you're reading it, the author is telling you, like, hey, this is like a classic thing. Can you do it too? Like all that. And I'm like, what? Well, oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right. Challenge.
So that there was a lot of that kind of I was trying to sort of open it up to say to the reader, this is how we do this. But I also trying to say, actually, we're tricking you here. Do you see what we've just done? I'm not trying to give away all the tricks of the whodunit range, because otherwise that would be quite a boring book. But to just try and make it, to bring the reader in on that, because with whodunits, particularly whodunit, I mean the crime in general, but particularly whodunits, it is very much the reader is involved in that. It because it's got that game element. There's always, can I beat the detective? Can I work out the clues? Can the author hide that from me, or am I going to? I'm on to you. I mean, and as a reader, I always manage to guess the solution about one page before the big
Yeah.
reveal, if that. So it was quite interesting to say, well, if I put all of that information out there, can I still fool the reader? If I tell you everything, all the clues right at the beginning, because as writers, you quite often don't do that. You quite often sort of drop the clues in, periodically, so to space them out a bit. But I thought, if I can get it all out at the beginning and I can still fool the reader, that's an interesting book. So that was kind of my premise, but I don't know. Obviously, hard to know how that worked, but that was my aim anyway.
I have to say, I've read through, and I did guess one thing right away, and I was like pretty proud of myself. And then
Ooh,
everything else, I was like, oh, poop. Missed that, missed that, missed that. But one thing I was like, nah, that's
yeah.
not.
Well, that's good. That's good. One thing, yes, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
It was a win.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, definitely.
Cool. I'd love to talk about how you develop the narrator's voice, as well as like, addressing you in the second person for sections, and the the twists and turns that are worked in, the giving you rules and then changing them. Like the narrator has a sort of like Loki, like chaos god vibe sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. So there's kind of, in my head, I've kind of split the narrator into two. There is this one quite traditional narrator, and then there's this other one that is sometimes the same as the first narrator and sometimes isn't, but it's just kind of is a bit more sly and a bit more knowing, um and just sort of picks things up and goes, oh, what's this? So that I thought that was quite interesting, to do that kind of split personality thing. Um, and it was very fun to write. I actually put in a lot more of that as I was writing because I enjoyed it so much. And then I had to take some of it out. It was like, oh, damn, all those things where you think, oh,
Right.
that's really clever. I want to, no, we'll take that out. So, yeah, so that was the most fun parts to write.
Yeah, it was really fun to, I think interacting with the meta structure because, you come to it with some knowledge of sort of like the quote unquote rules and tropes of whodunits, and you learn more, have them presented to you as you read. But then those rules are also broken all the time.
Yeah.
Your expectations are subverted. What do you do to try to stay one step of where you imagine the reader is? Like, it sounds really challenging to have to be engineering those types of surprises.
Yes, yeah. So and of course you can get it wrong. If in my head as I'm writing, I'm thinking the reader's going to think this. I am leading them down this path, and then right at the last minute, I'm going to swerve off. But of course, I don't know that that's what the readers think. I don't know that they are picking up the clues that I'm laying down, or that I'm misdirecting them, and that's what's really hard about, I think, crime writing, because you are trying to subvert what the reader's expectation, and it's all about did I guess right? Did I guess right what the reader's going to think? And I mean, obviously, there were people who read it, who and I took them to, what were you thinking at this stage? What were you thinking at that stage? So I could try and gauge it, but you never really know what the reader's going to think. You never know whether they're actually thinking, that your red herring is the clue that it's not going to be, and so it's a lot of guesswork, and it's just then hoping that your actual reader is the same as that imagined reader that you imagine in your head as you write it down. So
There's a lot. There's a
hard to
lot that
know,
goes into one of
really.
these books.
Hmm?
There's a lot that goes into one of your books.
Well,
And
yeah,
crime,
probably too much. I think I start off chucking everything in, and then I try and strip it back a bit. But then I've got I'm quite frustrated by my own process of writing, because I have to start on page one, and then I have to write in the order that you would read it. And then when I realize that I've gone wrong, I have to go back to the beginning, and I can't do that. I mean, I know some writers who do, oh yeah, I'll do scene 1, chapter 3 today, and they'll write that, and then the next day they'll do a different chapter in a different. I can't write like that, so it's quite frustrating for me. But then the good thing about it is that when I get to the end, I've got to the end. When I get to that last page, not much left to do then, because I've kind of tidied it up as I was going along. So I like that aspect, but I'm too slow. I've got to try and get better at writing faster.
I would probably do it the same way. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but the very last thing you wrote, it was just like, I gotta go turn the computer back on. I was like,
Yeah,
that's
it's quite,
awesome.
it's quite it becomes like an obsession, I think, writing a book. I wake up thinking about it, and then I go to sleep thinking about it, and then you think, do I want to do another one? And then I try and put it off, not put it off, but I try and leave the writing as long as I can, because I know that when you're in it, it's like I don't answer the phone, and I don't get dressed sometimes. Sometimes I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I've got an idea, and I go run to the computer, and then the next thing I know, it's like 11:30, and I haven't had a cup of coffee. And so it's quite an for me, at least. I know that there are some writers who write 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That's not me. I just haven't got that yet. Maybe I will, because this is my first book. So maybe when as I go on, I can treat it more like a day job. But at the moment, it's more like an obsession.
I kind of
So
like that. That's how you approach it, though. It's like this is love for you. This was amazing. This is everything. You put all
yeah,
of it into it.
everything was all in there. Everything I've got, everything I could, everything that I thought I wanted to get it in there somehow. So sometimes it's just little allusions to things that I know. I know what I mean by them, and then sometimes it's just, yeah. But I've tried to make it I've tried to make it count, but it's quite a long book as it is. So maybe as I go on, maybe I can streamline that a bit. I don't know.
Mm.
It's a big book. It is true. But it's
Yes,
impressive. It's very impressive. The detail, all the stuff you had to do, all the extra bits and pieces. Ah,
Yeah, writing a good whodunit sort of feels like it's spinning plates. Like you have to kind of keep them all spinning at the
yes.
same time. And if one's slowing down, you give it like another little spin. It's a lot of mental processes to keep
Mm,
track of at one time.
yeah.
yes,
Mm.
yeah. But I'm hoping that the reader is doing the same thing because of the way I've written it. The reader also has to be spinning those plates so that they can see. Then they get a little taste of how complicated it can be because they've got to try and come up with a solution using all that evidence. So and it is it's quite difficult. I mean, I've got spreadsheets you wouldn't believe, keeping track of all the evidence and what place is this coming in, who says that. It's so complicated. But of course, it took me 3 or 4 years to write it. The reader gets what, 10, 15 hours, maybe 20 hours if they're a slow reader to go through the same thing. So I do have an advantage over the reader. The chances of them getting the entire solution by the end is quite, unless they are spectacular, because of course I've had an awful lot longer to sit with that evidence and think, what does that mean, and so I'm hoping that gives me the advantage, and that everybody doesn't go, guessed it by page 20, because that's terrible. It's terrible for them and it's terrible for me too, because who wants to read a book that there's no suspense in?
Yeah. I'd love to ask about the true crime dealing with a real cold case and fictionalizing it. When you are using something that has really happened, but um, shaping it for your fictional setting,
Mm.
what's your approach to that? Like, where do you preserve the truth? Where do you fudge things in order to fictionalize it? Like,
Yeah.
how does that work its way in?
So I decided quite early on that could not change anything. So anything that was in the real case is in my book. I couldn't leave out you know, any evidence that just didn't happen to suit my argument. Everything that's in there is in there, and there is stuff that I've left out because I mean the book is long, but a murder investigation is thousands of pages of documents. Um, and you can't include everything, so you have to be a bit sort of representative and sort of, I'll take this clue and that's kind of the same as the other things. I'll tell you about this blood stain, I won't tell you about those 10 other blood stains because it's the same. um so there was that, but I also wanted to, I mean, I did want to make sure I wasn't libeling anybody by misrepresenting the evidence, but also, it was a real case. Somebody really died. It Those people, their lives have been blighted by that, and the killer was never, nobody was ever convicted for that crime. So there is that, and I do think you have to bear that in mind a little bit. So I didn't want to make sure I wanted to make sure that I didn't put words in people's mouth. So everything that my characters say, so all of the evidence is based on witness testimony and documents that I reviewed. So they're complete. I left some stuff out when it wasn't relevant, and I only included a selection of stuff because I couldn't include it all. But I tried really hard to make sure that I did not misrepresent it. I didn't underplay something that the police considered really important. So all of the testimony is, it's not verbatim from the court documents, obviously, because that would be quite dull. But
Mm.
it is true. I think everything, all of that stuff is true. I haven't changed any of that stuff, and that was quite important because I don't want to get sued, but also, it's somebody's real life there. So I think it's quite important that you don't end up accidentally pointing the finger of suspicion at somebody else. By trying to exonerate one person, I might point the finger at somebody else. So I think that was quite important, and I was quite careful about that, I think. And I was a little bit worried that people might, misinterpret that as me being accusing people, because I don't want to be doing that.
Right. I didn't know it was based on a cold case until Jen told me. And it's I don't think I've ever read a fiction book kind of like like and then you're playing part of
Yeah.
it. So that's a different twisty take too.
I mean, you don't need to know about the real case because all of the information is there. So, so it's quite interesting that some people, I mean, it's 50 years old, the real case. So a lot of people who knew that, it was, I mean, it was a very famous case in Britain. I don't know how, far that traveled outside
Hmm.
Britain, but if you don't know, I don't really think it matters if you don't know, but it obviously, if you do recognize it, that's just a little added thing. But I don't think it matters, but I do think it matters that people who know who know the case, or maybe they know somebody who was involved in the case, if they read it, that they don't go, well, I never said that, or that's not right. I think that's important for them rather than for other people.
Yeah, you gave them respect. That's nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. That was my intention anyway.
Absolutely. I'm also curious about you've mentioned a little of this before, but there are lots of crime fiction Easter eggs, some in the names, places. Could you talk a little bit more about like what is in your crime fiction DNA? Who are your favorites and your influence?
Oh, so many. So, I mean, obviously Agatha Christie, because she's written so many great books, and a couple of quite controversial ones as well. But my favourite crime writer was always Dorothy L. Sayers and Lord Peter Wimsey. My mom, I think, was a little bit in love with Lord Peter Wimsey, and she sort of introduced me to him, and I'm a little bit in love with Lord Peter Wimsey.
Aw.
Just but I just love the whole um the whole theatre of the whodunit, and it's got quite a revival now. I mean, cinema, it's they had the Knives Out and the redoing of the Agatha Christie's, and that's all, and they sort of camped it up a little bit, which I really like as well. I like that element of it, that really playful element of it. So I've always loved that. And if I had when I was younger, I didn't have any money, but I'd go to the second-hand bookshop and I'd pick up half a dozen um, crime novels. I was mostly a crime reader, but whodunits in particular. There's that particular, everything's it's a lovely world, sort of 1920s, 1930s. The world is everyone's wealthy, everyone's nice, apart from the murder, of course, and then this. The detective comes in and he sets everything right, and at the end of the novel, you don't get. I mean, in a more gritty crime novel, all of those people would be traumatized by seeing a trail of dead bodies, But who done it? They're still drinking their tea and they're still having their cucumber sandwiches because it's just a game, and that's the bit I really love about it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of perfect. And I do love there is like a theatricality to the whodunit, especially in the adaptations. It gives like a lot of great actors some nice opportunities to chew the scenery a little bit and when they're doing
Yeah,
big reveals and
definitely. Yeah, there's that, and there's so many great. I mean, they're kind of stock characters in a way in a whodunit. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of depth to anybody, and apart from the detective. The detective is the only sort of fully fleshed out character. Everybody else, they sort of walk on pars, isn't it? And then they deliver their statement or they drop their clue, and then they sort of shuffle off again because it's the game. The game is what matters. The detective is what matters, and it's look how brilliant Poirot is, or look how brilliant Peter Wimsey is, and that's what you read it for. You don't really care about the person that was murdered, or like that's just the setup. So
I think a question we always wonder, what's next?
yes, yes.
yeah, so I am writing a new book. It's got the same sort of tone and the same sort of playfulness as The Game is Murder, but it's not a series in any way. You know, that was definitely a standalone book. Had I known it was going to be published, I might have not made it a standalone book, but obviously I didn't. So I thought it might be one of those under the bed things when I started it. So yeah, so I'm trying to do something that has got the same sort of feel, but at the same time I want it to be something completely new, because I've got to spend the next year or more writing it. So I want it to be something that I want to wake up thinking about it at 4 a.m. and rush to my computer. So yeah, but it's still early days, because I'm still, because I have to start on page 1 and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. I'm still at that beginning stage, but once I get going, it all falls into place, then it'll be quite quick. So it'll be, yeah. So hopefully not 3 years in the writing, but
Well, we'll keep our eyes out.
yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah. Very excited to see what's next. And thank you, so much for stopping by the show and sharing your work with us.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for being the first podcast interview I've done, because that's been, yeah, really, I hope that all the others are as easy as this one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. An honor and a delight. Yeah. Oh, cool. So, listeners, it's now your turn. Please check out The Game is Murder. By the time that you hear this, it will be out in the world. So go to your favorite bookstore or library or website, wherever you like to go for your books. All right, it's time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.